Hello, Kelly here with Kelly's Soroka Life. Today, I have a deck review for you. Now, this time I'm actually reviewing two different decks. They're related, but two different decks because these are two decks that I worked with for the month. And if you have been following along recently, you will know that I have been studying four different items, magical items during each month. And this month in November, I have been working with the crystal Lapis Lazuli, the herb Mullein, the deck, The Flight of the Butterfly Tarot, and the book Goddess Alive. And I'll link all of those things in the description box so you can see that below if you want to go back and look at any of the videos. I've already uploaded the one on Lapis Lazuli and the one on Mullein, so you can go back if you're interested in those and go back and check those out. There'll also be links to the PDF. So if you want more information and to do the magic with each of those items, then you can find that as well in the Cauldron. So just check out everything down below and you'll find all the things that I've mentioned here. So today, like I said, I'm doing two decks. And I got this deck. This was a deck that I backed in Kickstarter. And I backed it because I have some of the decks of this author. And the creator of this deck is Kelly Burton. And she did The Journey of the Sacred Bee. And I think that might have been her first deck, but it was one that was the first one for me of hers. And then she has two more after that. The Journey of the Sacred Beekeeper, I believe, and then an oracle of a bee oracle that goes along with that. And so I know there's at least three, and I have all of those three. And so when she came out with this one, I wasn't quite sure because she has a very distinctive style, and I really like the bee ones, and so I wasn't really sure if I would want one that was in such a similar style as hers. But this one has a very different take. It is The Flight of the Butterfly. The tarot deck is based on the story of Psyche and Eros and how they fell in love and all their trials and tribulations. And I won't spoil the story for you in case you want to dive into this deck. But it is, the Greek myth of Psyche and Eros and how and this it follows them through their story and puts a lot of their story in the cards and uses the flight of the butterfly uses the butterfly as a symbol. And we I think most of us think of the butterfly and think of it as a symbol of transformation, something that comes from starts out as one thing, this caterpillar, and ends up into something that is just totally different as a butterfly, but has to go through the changes and has to do things at each stage. And she kind of likens that to the story of Psyche and Eros and how they had to change and had to make adjustments and to learn lessons along the way in order to get to where they wanted to be in the end. So it was really interesting. And when I read about it, and I knew that the art was going to be pretty similar to the Sacred Bee decks, but it seemed like such a just a beautiful story and a beautiful deck. And I do really enjoy her art style. And so I knew that it wasn't something that I wouldn't enjoy, but I just didn't want to have something that I would just reach for the bee tarot or the bee tarots or oracles and not really look at this one. But then she offered also, and this is the second deck that I'm going to talk about, an oracle deck along. It doesn't really go along with it, but she offered it at the same time. So I backed both of them at the same time. And it is called the Mystic Augur and Sage Oracle. And now this one is really fun because it has three different kind of guide cards along with all the regular oracle cards. So it's got, it's a chunky deck. It has a lot of cards to it. So it is and it's fun because you can use those three decks, the Mystic, the Augur, and the Sage, and they all have different ways that they look at the world and look at magic. And you can use that as your theme. Draw one of those three cards, and then how many ever Oracle cards that you want, just if you're just using the Oracle deck. And look at the symbols on the cards and read the descriptions and see how that card can be looked at it in different ways and how you can interpret the same symbol, the same keywords, the same meanings, the same path on your journey in a different way, depending on how the mystic or a sage or augur would look at them. So I decided to do that and decided to combine these two together and work with them together. So every time I did a reading with the flight of the flight of the butterfly, I chose one of the three guides cards, and then I also chose one of the oracle cards. So I might be doing a reading like just a 5 card reading, and so maybe I had a question about the holidays and I wanted to know what I needed to know about the holidays that are coming up. So I would draw one of the guide cards and then draw one of the oracle cards from the oracle deck and then do my 5 card reading. And the guide card and the oracle card would give me a theme, and it would kind of give me a theme to work with and just some depth to the reading that I did. And I really enjoyed it. I did lots of readings with these two together, and it was really fun. And I know that I will enjoy using these separately and using them together again. And I'm anxious now to kind of go back and pull out the Sacred Bee decks and see how they work together with that. So it's really fun, and I really had a good time with these decks. So I will show you, and this I did this on a deck review sheet that I have in the Cauldron. So if you want to do your own deck review, I have one. This is just a 1-page deck review that you can just make some notes if you want to do a deck review, or you want to keep a journal about decks that you have or that you've worked with, and this is a good way to do that. So that's what I did. So I'm kind of going off the notes that I made on these deck review sheets, and you can again find the link to the Cauldron, and you can find it in there. So, and there's also a longer one too. If you want to do a longer deck study, there's a PDF for a longer deck study as well. So both of those are in there. So this one, again, it's called the Mystic, Augur, and Sage Oracle. So here is the guidebook, and this is the size of the cards. The cards are this size, and the cards are just a little bit bigger than standard tarot size, but not at all hard to shuffle. And I have small hands, and so if it wasn't hard for me, usually it means that the slightly bigger size is going to be pretty manageable for most people. And so this is the guidebook, and the guidebook is it's kind of small, but this was an independent deck. So and this is backed on Kickstarter. So this is, you can see how here there is a black and white picture for each of the oracle cards, and then there's the keywords down at the bottom, and then there's a part up here that describes, the first couple of paragraphs describe the card and what's in it, and then here this is the sacred journey. So this is kind of how you would interpret the card in the reading and kind of give it a little bit more depth. And that way you can use one of these 3 cards. And so the augur, the sage, and the mystic. And so each one of these has a description of the card and how to use the magic of either one, any one of these along with your reading. And I'll show you the reading that I did at the end when I'm done with the whole review. So this one, it's got a pretty brief introduction, but it does has some nice spreads in it, and it's very good about telling you how to use the cards together and giving you examples of how to use these cards. And so I thought that was really fun, and it gave me good ideas of how to use the cards and when I go back to use this deck again, how I can use it in a different way. So I really enjoyed that. So I'll just show you some of the cards. And here it's got, lovely reversible green back. And some of the cards, they're very, and you can see her art style is definitely very specific. And it to me looks like line drawings mixed with watercolors mixed with collage. But you see a lot of it's very symbolic. There's lots of symbolism with gods and goddesses and other deities, other myths and stories. And there's a lot of tree, plant, animal symbolism in all of these oracle cards. So you'll see. So this one is the Omnist, and this is the first one, the Omnist, and you can kind of see there's lots of symbols on here, all these religious symbols here, and holding the world in your hands, and just being able to see all of the wonderful things that are in the world. This is practice patience. Let's see this cute little turtle here. Turtle. Chiron the healer. And this is the colony of belief. So kind of a throwback to the bee symbolism in the other decks. And this one is the depth of consciousness. And then this one is protecting the journey. And it again, the symbols and the colors and the just all the attention to detail and this added mixture of these guide cards just makes this a really, really fun deck and a very nuanced and very deep deck, and something that I can think that you can get really, really good readings with. And on its own, since you have the three guide cards, or you don't need to use the guide cards, you can mix them in, and I think that was in the guidebook, and that you can mix them in with other cards, and then when they come up, that's a special thing to pay attention to. So that might be something that I do in the future as well when I use this deck again. So it's very beautiful, and I really, really enjoyed it. And there's just some beautiful cards in it. And if you like that art style and you like cards that have a lot of symbolism and a lot of depth and a lot of, they're very detailed. They have a lot in them. This one is the web we weave. And when you read the story, you'll hear what the symbols are, and why this was called what it is, and how to use it on your journey. So if you do enjoy it and you like that kind of art style, then I would say this is definitely a deck for you. And if you like very symbolic cards that go beyond the basic like spider or web or hope or optimism, and there's nothing wrong with those oracle decks. They're I have some that are very beautiful and very handy, and you just use those. So welcome back. This is part 2 of the deck review video of the Mystic Augur and Sage Oracle and the Flight of Butterfly Tarot. I ended up having to put this in 2 different parts. So in part 1, I talked about the Oracle deck, the Mystic Augur and Sage Oracle, and how it has the 3 special cards that you can use to kind of give you a theme to the cards that you're using. And I did that, and I combined that using drawing one of those 3 cards with an oracle card, which kind of gave me an overall theme for any of the readings that I did. So when I did a subsequent reading with it, whether it was a lot of times I did something along the lines of if it were a full moon or new moon, I used it for that to do my moon reading. I did some just daily readings with it. I did some week ahead planning every Sunday. I do a kind of week ahead spread. And so this gave me a really good theme to use for any reading that I did. And so this is, and I'll talk a little bit about just the tarot deck. And so this is the Flight of the Butterfly Tarot. And this is one that just came out pretty recently. And like I said in part 1, that I have the Sacred Bee Tarot that this author did. And I knew that I liked it, and I wanted to get this one because it was just really pretty. It was just a very pretty deck, and you saw in part 1 the oracle cards and how they have this very unique art style, and the deck is no different. It has a definite art style, and I'll show you. This is the backs of these are red, and they're, you can see it, but they are gilded. They have this kind of like coppery color gilding. And the cardstock is kind of a matte finish. And the cards are a little bit larger than regular cards, but they handle very well. The cardstock is a very good cardstock. It's not too thin. It's not too thick. It shuffles really well. And even with the gilding, it's done very well. And so I like working with the cards. So this is Temperance here. And you see the art style. It's very unique. It reminds me of kind of like line drawing with watercolor, with collage. And so I really like this one. This one is an interesting deck because it follows the story of Psyche and Eros. And so this is a Greek myth, and it is very much about coming of age, about making choices, about having, being tempted and having to face hardships. And so this is it. I really like the story, and I really like the theme, and I really like the art style. And so it's very interesting, and it follows. And if you use the deck, you can see in each card how it has some vision of the story that the author had. And so if we have, this is the 7 of Pentacles, and the butterfly, of course, this is the flight of the butterfly. The butterfly has a lot of appearances here, and there's different butterflies in each suit, which I thought was really fun too. So it kind of combines that butterfly, the metaphor of the metamorphosis and the change through the story of Psyche and Eros. And so this is the 2 of Swords. Here's the Ace of Swords. And you see I don't know if it's probably a little bit, I'm trying to get it, maybe put it back like this. It's not so blurry. But it's a very pretty deck. Now, the only thing that I think that I wasn't too thrilled about with the deck is that it has a lot like I said, it has a lot from the story. There's a lot of art from the story. And so this is Psyche as the Princess of Swords. And then she also shows up as a lot of the other court cards, and Eros shows up in a lot of the other court cards as well. And so, like, here's the Queen of Cups. And again, you know, it's a different part in the story, but it definitely is a little bit repetitive. And that's okay because it is, you know, it is a story. And let's see if we can find the other, like here's the Knight of Swords. So here's Eros as the Knight of Swords. And then you'll see him again in the Knight of Cups. So it was a little bit repetitive, and but it, you know, it talks about different parts of the story. And, you know, I knew that because I read about the deck when I backed on Kickstarter. So I kind of knew about that, and I knew that it was going to have a lot to do with the story. And the cards are, like, if you look at these, the cards are different enough that I think that it's not too repetitive. I think that made me not want to work with it, but it was a little bit getting used to that and to seeing kind of the same face in the different cards. And the same thing with Psyche when she's in several of the cards. But it is, you know, it's a story about her, and it does bring in this very beautiful artwork, and it's a good story, and it's very well done, and I personally enjoy this art style very much. And working with it, I think working with it in tandem with the Oracle deck really gave it a depth. And so that story where there might have been some repetitiveness of, you know, the butterflies and the story of Psyche and Eros and those two as characters in the story, then having that depth of a card that gave me a guidance with one of the mystic, the Augur, the Sage, and then having a separate oracle card that really gave me kind of an overall meaning. And so I really, really did enjoy working with those together. And it was really fun, and I definitely recommend either of these decks, both of these decks together, if you like this art style, if you like having an oracle deck that has some different kind of words in it, some different kinds of, the oracle deck definitely has some different takes and some different depth to it, and some different symbols in it that I've never seen in other decks. So I really enjoy that, and I really like that. And I'm very picky about oracle decks. They have to have something really unique to them for me to really like an oracle deck, because I have so many that I do like. And so this one was one that I didn't mind bringing into my collection at all, because I know that I will be able to use this with other decks, and, you know, I will get a lot of use out of it. And the same thing with the Flight of the Butterfly. I was a little bit hesitant because I know at least 3 others by this same artist, and so I was a little bit hesitant, but the story is really good, and I really enjoyed the story, and I do enjoy the art style, and I do think that this deck will be a good one that I will just want to pick up and use, especially I think in the spring when, you know, things are growing and things, you know, the butterflies are out and things have gone through this kind of metamorphosis over the winter. And I think it'll be a great deck to bring out in this spring. So that is my deck review for my November deck that I use. And like I said, I usually don't use 2 decks together. And for my study, I do use two decks together a lot in other things, but in this particular deck study that I'm doing for the months that I've done for this year, I've not used two decks together, but I did want to use these two together. And sorry, this is kind of a little bit disjointed, but I had filmed the first part, and now I'm back to film the second part. So this wraps up pretty much what I have done for November. And you can see for November, I worked with Mullein, the herb, Lapis, Lazuli, the crystal, and these two decks together. And I've been reading Goddess Alive and Goddess, and here's Goddess Alive. And so I started reading this one and realized that the way that the book is laid out is that this one is laid out with the seasons. And so there is a goddess that goes along with each of the seasons. So here's Beltane, and this is Freya, Norse goddess of love and war. And so and then there's other ones and other goddesses that go along with the moon phases. And I think that's the seasons and the moon phases. And so there are lots of practices that you can do in here. There's path working, visualizations for each one, and that ties in to each of the seasons. And so the first one is Yule, which is coming up. And so the winter solstice is coming. And so the first one is Cauldron, that is coming up with the Yule season. And so I decided what I'm going to do is use this book into the next year as a guide, as a book that I can get to know some of the goddesses during this season, study them, and have kind of an overall kind of goddess study for the next year. And so that's what I'm going to do with this book. And so since I have the goddess Afoot too, and I'm going to work that one in the rotation as well. But since those two kind of ended up being more books that are kind of things that I want to study along the way, then I did that, and I'm going to put that in for my rotation for next year. And then I'm also going to pick a new book for December. So I'm going to I kind of had these both, the Goddess Alive and the Goddess Afoot for November and December. But since I'm going to use the Goddess Alive next year and kind of work the Goddess Afoot into, however I want to work it in for my practice next year, then I'm going to pick a different book. I'm not sure yet what I'm going to pick, but I just got in a few very interesting books. And so I think I'm just going to pick one of those new ones that I got in. And then I have all the things I'm going to do for next year, because I'm going to do the same practice next year with the 4 things for the month. And I'm also going to add working in a fiction book, because I do want to, I love reading fiction, just reading. So I'm going to work in a fiction book as well, something that I could read in a month, something short, but I'm going to also add a deck to the fiction book. So it won't be, in this practice, I have the 4 kind of separate things, and I do them all in the month, but they don't really relate to each other per se. So in January, I'm going to start having the 4 things again: the crystal, the herb, the deck, and the book. And it's going to be a nonfiction kind of magic book that I'm going to read for that. But I'm also going to have kind of like a book study. So I'll have a book that I'm going to read for the month, but I'll do, as I go along, break the book up into sections, into kind of weeks, and then have a tarot deck that goes along with it and do some readings along with the book. So it might be, doing a reading about the main character, or something, a kind of cliffhanger in the book or something like that. But I thought that was just really interesting and it's something fun as I've been going through kind of moving books around and getting some books and, really wanting to spend more time reading in the next year. And that was one of the reasons that I did this study for 2025 is I wanted to go back and study a lot of the decks that I have. And so I'm doing that next year. I have some new decks for next year and some new books, but most of them are decks and books that I have that I maybe haven't used in a while or that I know that I want to read. And so the fiction books most of those are newer books that I've kind of collected this past year and I want to read into 2026. So I'll be talking more about that and give you some more guidance and things if you want to follow along and make sure, again, that you like and subscribe here so that you get notifications for what I'm going to be doing in the next year. So thank you for following along. I'll have in the description box all the information about what I've been talking about for November, some kind of wrap up, and then in the next video, I will talk about the things that I'm doing for December. And I'm working on the next class. I think it's class 5 for Lessons in Lenormand, so that will be out soon. So, and I also have links to the videos that I already did, the one on Mullein and the one on Lapis Lazuli. So you can go back if you haven't watched those. You can watch those and get all caught up on the things I did in November. And I'm hoping in December to do a couple of more things, maybe do a live reading. So if you're interested in that and that you would want to come, or you would want to just tell me that you have a question, I can put up a post and you can ask a question, and then when I do the live reading, I'll answer the question and on the live reading. And if you want to do a reading, if you want to work with me one-on-one personally doing tarot exploration, an astrology reading, or you want to do a Reiki crystal healing session, all of those, I'll have links to those down at the bottom so that if you want to do that or interested in working one-on-one, especially now that we're getting towards the end of the year and working into the next year, it's a great time to get a reading to do some individual work. So I'll have all of that stuff down below. And again, subscribe so that you can hear about when the next videos come out. And I will see you again later. Bye.